12 for case number 2014.0306T, amendments to the planning code regarding medical cannabis dispensaries in the Ocean Avenue Neighborhood Commercial Transit District.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Grand Star Department staff. Matthias from Supervisor Yee's office is here to talk about the proposed ordinance, after which I'll continue my presentation.
Thank you.
Commissioner, good afternoon. Matthias Mornino, legislator to Supervisor Norman Yee. We're here today after the Supervisor's office has heard numbers of concerns about clustering of the MCDs around the Ocean Avenue corridor. As you know, and you have reviewed last week, Ocean Avenue is included for a very small portion in the green zone, and the current zoning allows MCDs on Ocean Avenue. We have looked into a number of solutions around clustering, and we have presented to you an ordinance that creates a 500 feet buffer around existing dispensaries to avoid clustering. I want to acknowledge the comments by Commissioner Hillis last week, supporting kind of an idea of looking at clustering, but also both Commissioner Moore talking about more community involvement, and also Commissioner Wu, and therefore we kind of looked at what concrete steps we could take. So in analyzing a conditional use application that would be required of a medical cannabis dispensary located within 500 feet of another existing dispensary, we would ask that you consider the community benefits that the dispensary would bring, that the MCD prepare a parking and transportation management plan, and that the MCD has a demonstrated commitment to maintaining public safety by actively engaging with the community. We also acknowledge that there is a much larger conversation around not only clustering, but expanding the green zone, and kind of like where does this discussion leads us citywide. So we've included language in the legislation that would basically vacate the terms of the ordinance if you were to adopt a more general policy. We think that, that is part of a broader conversation, and there was a very interesting conversation last week, and many issues were brought up, including capping the number of MCDs. We have community support here to talk about this ordinance, but I'm also available for any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthias. So this ordinance amends the planning code to require that in the Ocean Avenue Neighborhood Commercial Transit District, a medical cannabis dispensary may be allowed within 500 feet of another MCD as a conditional use, provided that no other citywide regulation governing the proximity of MCDs to each other becomes law. As I'm sure you're aware, after last week's hearing, MCD applications generally require a mandatory discretionary review hearing with the Planning Commission. However, in the West Portal, a CU is required to establish an MCD regardless of its proximity to another MCD. And in the Excelsior Outer Mission MCD, a CU is required to establish an MCD within 500 feet of an existing MCD. This ordinance would replicate the controls for the Excelsior Outer Mission District and include a provision that directs the removal of these controls if the city adopts a citywide anti-clustering controls for MCDs. If you recall last week, the Commission recommended that this type of buffering be considered citywide. It was integrated into the report. The department would prefer that any changes to the city's MCD regulations be held off until the MCD report is received by the board, and any further restrictions on locations of MCDs be tied to the expanded green zone. However, Supervisor Hughes expressed the need to address an immediate concern in his district, and because this ordinance would be superseded if and when citywide regulations governing the proximity of MCDs are adopted, and this type of buffer would potentially work citywide because of its flexibility, the department finds that it's a workable solution. The department recommendation is for approval, and that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's open it for public comment. I have a number of speaker cards. Michael Goldman, Elihu Hernandez, Shona G., and Denise Dorey. First speaker can come up to the podium.
Good afternoon, Madam President and Commissioners. My name is Shona. First, I'd like to thank Supervisor Yee and his staff for working with our community to understand the complex set of concerns and circumstances on Ocean Street. We've made a new ally that is fair and inclusive. The green zone is very small on Ocean Street itself, and only one applicant for permit is in current compliance with zoning restrictions and law. These applicants are not the new kids on the block, but established compassionate providers in the district. The two currently operating MCDs were grandfathered land uses. One being NorCal at 1545 Ocean after a hostile takeover of Waterfall Wellness, the other being 1944 Ocean, which has recently switched hands in a peaceful yet still not transparent manner. This is not a proliferation of applicants like Abalos's district, whose true source of the problem is our neighboring county, San Mateo. And they do not provide MCDs for their patients. But this is a true case of good players versus bad players. And we don't understand the support of a careful pre-application process, furthering the DR process and findings to assure that the city has the best of the best on our map, and then simply allowing the change of ownership to occur in the darkness via the back door. In 1545 Ocean's case into the hands of a prior permittee in violation of the city's laws. In no other business arena would they be allowed to continue to operate. This violates the public trust of neighbors and patients alike. We are neutral on the legislation, but we request that it be sent to the board if passed with a recommendation that the Department of Public Health review their policies and processes of transfer of ownership, closing the loopholes, and securing a transparency in public hearings and notification of the MCD's patient base and surrounding immediate neighbors and merchants. And I'd like to thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Elihu Hernandez. I am part of the City Hall Working Group, and I'm here to talk to you about item number 12. This current commission here, this current body, has a very lack of open transparency. There is no open transparency. There needs to be an open transparency for transfer of ownership at least forward to DPH to review it, Department of Public Health. And I want to remind that this is the exact same body that allowed a highly concentrated area of pharmaceutical companies between 3rd Street and 5th Street and Market. There is a certain pharmaceutical company where I can walk in, buy a thing of Robitussin for $6.43. The line's too long, I can go one more block to Walgreens and buy the exact same bottle for $6.43. This is totally wrong. The MCDs on Ocean Avenue right now is such restricted with the green space that MCDs actually specialize in certain products. One MCD can specialize in edibles. Another MCD can specialize in tinctures. Another MCD can specialize in actual cannabis that you smoke. Different patients have different needs. Certain patients cannot actually inhale medical marijuana smoke for their diseases or for their ailments. Certain medical marijuana patients require edibles in order to survive and to live. This is about accessibility needs and access. Highly at-risk patients in San Francisco is going to suffer for this. I just asked this board and this commission to approve this and go straight to DPH. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Michael Goldman. I was a member of the Medical Cannabis Task Force Patient Advocacy Committee, and I'm currently on the City Hall Working Group for David Chu. I have a couple concerns, and I think they fall under the idea that the Health Commission, Public Health Commission, has a lead role in medical cannabis issues, and they really ought to be consulted before we go forward with this. The current green zone restrictions are already limiting a lot of options for spaces for dispensaries, and these kinds of additional restrictions, while that green zone is not expanded, of course, as you know, further constricts options. And of course, as you know, right now, there's only these small number of dispensaries in this district. There's more that may be applying, but the ownership of those has been changed without the public being noticed. And I personally, as a patient, was not aware of the change of ownership of the Waterfall Wellness Dispensary, and did not know who my provider was. My medical provider should be known to me, and there's no disclosure. They had the same signage outside, and just continued operating as though they were the same dispensary, and in fact they are not. And this is a very serious problem if we're going to have you know, a restricted number of locations, and those locations are being operated in a non-transparent fashion where they didn't even go through the normal approval process as a dispensary to, you know, be approved as the operators. So I would ask basically that this be postponed for the health department and the Public Health Commission to give input on the impacts of the changes proposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Denise Dorey. I think the Public Health Department is a better candidate for oversight in this case, and for the cannabis community anyway, on a statewide and local level. I'm voicing my concern about 1545 Ocean if a patient goes there to a dispensary, they want to be aware of a change of ownership. Since if the policies change and the medicine changes without our knowledge, is there expectation of service quality? And I don't know of any other business where that takes place, so any type of business. We need transparency to protect the public from businesses operating in a roguish manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment?
My name is Mike Hinkle. I've been a member of Waterfall Wellness for a couple of years. I was just really kind of shocked of the takeover. I just felt that it wasn't the same dispensary that I frequently visited. I just felt really uncomfortable going to the dispensary anymore. I just wish they would be more transparent of what's going on in the dispensary. Ownership takes place. I think the patient should know. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Weaver, and I'm the Executive Director of the Ocean Avenue Association, which is a community benefits district. As you can tell by previous testimony, things are complex in the marijuana clinic community, especially in our neighborhood. We have discussed the situation as it's changed over the past 6 months, and we've established a position on the matter, which I think is fair to everyone. Let me just briefly state it. Ocean Avenue Association recognizes that a diverse mix of useful retail businesses serve the community better than a concentration. Clustering does not provide the variety of retail services that are the backbone of a successful commercial corridor, but meets the needs of its residents. OAA therefore supports anti-clustering policies for the Ocean Avenue commercial corridor, such as is proposed by Supervisor Yee. OAA believes that no more than 2 MCDs are needed to provide full service on the Ocean Avenue commercial corridor. This issue of clustering, as you're probably aware, is something that happens in neighborhood commercial corridors in many different forms. This is a particularly controversial one, maybe is obvious, but I think that basically we have 2 clinics now, and a third is applying. I'm not sure how this whole thing's going to work out, but we'd like to stay at 2 rather than have more, because as pointed out, there are many communities that have none, and we think we're doing our share of providing space and support for clinics that exist. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Robert Canaris. I live in the Ocean Avenue district. I'm in favor of the making clustering of MCDs in this area a conditional use. As I understand it, then the burden of proof would be on a new MCD that would have to show to us that it's necessary and desirable. As you know, MCDs are definitely clustered within the city, downtown, Mission Street, and more recently Ocean Avenue. And yet a large number of areas of the city do not have any MCDs. As I've said before, I disagree with that idea that there are not enough areas, open spaces for MCDs in this other area of the city. There are many blocks in most areas of the city that are available, and each of those blocks has a number of store locations. And putting new MCDs in these other areas would improve patient access. Also, of course, underlying this is the fact that we and neighbors in many other areas of the city obviously seem to agree that the MCD does not improve the character of our business district. So I hope you pass this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Carolyn Karras. I live in the Ocean Avenue area. I would be in favor of passing this ordinance to change from the DR to the conditional use. I think this would open up availability to patients, which is one of the points that various people have been making. Diversity on the of businesses in an area is really an important thing. It attracts a good clientele and it's healthy for the neighborhood. So I think I would urge you to vote in favor of the change from a DR to the conditional use. The conditional use puts the burden of proof for the need for that a new MCD is necessary and consistent with the neighborhood. So I hope that you will approve the ordinance that is being proposed, or the change that is being proposed by Supervisor Yee. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. If I could ask staff a clarifying question. So what is in front of us today is whether or not we want to institute a CU process when there's a new MCD being proposed within 500 feet.
That's correct.
So we've heard a lot of concern in public comment about 1545 Ocean. That is an issue that actually should be dealt with at the Department of Public Health.
That's correct. The land use entitlement is carried with the land and not the owner. So when the owner changes, that has to go through the Department of Public Health. There is a public hearing on it. I don't think it's as rigorous as the Planning Commission or as one notice, but there is a public hearing for it.
Okay, and do you know the date of that public hearing?
It hasn't been set yet. It will be set in soon.
Thank you. Commissioner Antonini.
Yeah, I have a question for Mateus. You want to come up? So it was reported by staff that, for example, West Portal has a CU needed anywhere within the district, and this is only within 500 feet. Is there a reason why it isn't just district-wide like West Portal's is?
So the extent of the green zone on Ocean Avenue covers 2 blocks. So this would be a de facto conditional use for any existing or new MCD, because one of them is already located on that radius. I don't know if the supervisor would be opposed to larger commissioner views.
Well, the other thing would be that, I don't know who has jurisdiction, probably citywide would, but if some legislation was to change and allow a broader area, then if he made it the entire district, then it would, prevent the broader area from having additional, but I will probably support this. I think it's too restrictive. It should be the whole district, but I would support it as it's written for this particular time.
I appreciate your feedback, so I can share it with us.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple other comments. Yeah, I thought that this should be a policy citywide to have CUs, exactly for the reasons stated by business interests in the area, is that, something like this should require it to be necessary or desirable. And 4 commissioners out of 7 should believe that's the case. The burden of proof shouldn't be on the opponents to, make it unusual and extraordinary why it shouldn't be here. So, and some areas, West Portal in particular, I mentioned, and other streets you don't see any MCDs because, I think that they make it clear that the neighborhoods take strong positions as to whether they should be there or not, of course, so I think that it gives the neighborhoods control of their own, what's in their neighborhoods. So I will support this because I think it's a step in the right direction. It just doesn't go far enough.
Thank you. Commissioner Sagaya.
Oh, no. I'm going to make a motion to approve, but I'd like to add a condition. The language in the actual ordinance says under number B2, the MCD has prepared a parking and transportation management plan sufficient, etc. And the MCD has demonstrated a commitment to maintaining public safety by actively engaging the community prior to applying for the CU, including adequate security measures in the operation of the business. Could we have that changed a little bit so that the MCD actually submits a security plan of some kind, and that the language can be worked out with the supervisor's office? But
You can put that in there. It's already required as part of the Department of Public Health application process.
do we see that when we get these? We'll see that when we get that request then?
If you want, we can make that a policy that they submit their security plan, but we typically don't get them.
Oh, okay. Then I'd like to include that just for some edification on our part, that there is such a thing in place, even though it's within the purview of DPH. Anyway, that's my motion.
Commissioner Sagaya, you're referring to the Health Code Section B2?
Yeah, I'd like to have that included as part of the packet that we receive.
Commissioner Hillis.
I just wanted to make, kind of similar comment to Commissioner Denise. I think that 500 feet, maybe, given the size of the district, maybe just a little small. I mean, you've got 3, it seems to me, just judging by this map, you could probably fit 3 more without having a CD process. I mean, obviously it's got to depend on where there's availability and openings. Am I now right about that?
If the green zone was expanded, possibly, but right now it's about only 2. The green zone is only about 2 blocks, and that's where the MCDs are located.
All right, so the green zone further limit.
Yeah, so this is kind of a de facto.
Yeah, and then I know in the CU, kind of what we look at when we do the CU is this kind of, in addition to the criteria we talked about before, that the existing concentration of MCDs in the district, that's kind of district-wide, not just within that 500-foot buffer, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Moore.
I'm in support of the legislation, except if this commission moves forward to develop more broader applicable standards, which might make it 500 feet or 600 feet or whatever. I would hope that we would also be able to revisit this. The one message I would like to give to Matthias is to ask the supervisor to please support the more thorough review of who the applicants are, and I do have an issue with then ask not any questions if there is a new organization coming in without bringing them back as the credible and tested and supported operators. I think that's an extremely important issue given the controversy which still exists on a federal level.
Commissioner Sugaya.
One final comment. Mr. Weaver didn't read the rest of the Ocean Avenue Association's letter to us, but it does state that, or they do state that a well-run MCD would be an asset in the district. And then they go on and sort of outline what they mean by that. So I think that should be made public, so to speak. So, because we always, it seems to me to be somewhat of an enlightened approach, given some of the testimony we've heard on other MCDs in other areas. So I'd like to acknowledge that.
Commissioner Moore.
Could I ask Mr. Starr, please, that part of that discussion be put into a file which becomes accessible if we as a commission move forward to discuss with you developing policy which might indeed add more definition to the legislation as it stands?
I'm part of this discussion?
Yeah, this, that we have it available should we move forward and add more detail as we move along.
Certainly.
Thanks.
Commissioners, I heard a motion, but I did not hear a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Commissioners, and there is a motion and a second to adopt a recommendation for approval with a request for security plans being included in the commission packets. On that motion, Commissioner Antonini, Commissioner Borden,
Aye.
Commissioner Hillis, Commissioner Moore,
Aye.
Commissioner Sugaya,
Aye.
Commissioner Fong,
Aye.
and Commissioner President Wu.
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners, and motion passes unanimously 7-0. So Commissioners, I place you now under your discretionary review calendar.